timely opportunity to review the current landscape of these industries and to inform our work on this committee as we draft legislation. Over the past few hearings, I've made it a priority to examine where within our federal ecosystem outdated or unnecessary rules exist, if there are any. Rules that don't impact the safety of our roads or that can be costly for those in the private sector looking to increase safety, improve efficiency, and innovate to create a more robust and effective industry that helps power our economy. For instance, last week during our nomination hearing of Mr. Bars to serve as administrator of the agency, I commented on FMCSA rules which would require truck drivers to manually place warning triangles behind a vehicle when it's stopped or pulled over. In the most severe circumstances, this could require drivers to exit their vehicles in severe weather when visibility might be poor and walk along busy highways next to oncoming traffic. I think we all understand the benefit of informing other drivers of stopped vehicles on the shoulder of the road, but if there are avenues that could allow for industry to provide the same or greater level of efficacy while increasing safety, then I believe Congress should remove bureaucratic red tape prohibiting this innovation. This is just one example where I think we can improve upon our rules and regulations to give industry more flexibility, to innovate and voluntarily deploy different technologies and applications to advance the safety of our roads. I hope this hearing can help highlight additional opportunities as we work on this surface transportation reauthorization. Our reauthorization work also provides a pathway to accomplish common sense policy solutions to address issues crippling our transportation network. Earlier this Congress, I led a hearing in this subcommittee examining the drastic rise of cargo theft and how it hurts businesses, our supply chains, and the American people. That hearing highlighted the complexity of freight fraud and cargo theft and the need for Congress to take a comprehensive approach to stopping these criminals. Since that hearing, I've learned of the need to update regulations, implement safeguards for consumers and businesses, and ensure our law enforcement agencies are well equipped and prepared to respond to any wrongdoing, and encourage or provide for greater cross-government collaboration. This hearing provides an opportunity to further these conversations and to hear from industry leaders representing voices afflicted by the freight fraud and how we can work to address these issues together. I know this is of the utmost importance to the chairman of the full committee, Senator Cruz, as well as our colleagues on the Democratic side of the aisle, and I stand ready to work with them to address this national and economic crisis. Lastly, I believe for our commercial trucking and bus industries, I believe that they are the safest, most effective, and among the most effective industries we have, and we must also focus on improving our roadway infrastructure so that they continue to be so. This includes maintaining road quality and focusing federal funding to leverage state, local, and private dollars for infrastructure projects that will vastly improve roadway safety. My home state of Indiana is home to over 97,000 miles of public roadways, and as the crossroads of America, Hoosiers rely heavily on our transportation infrastructure. In Evansville, Indiana, I've been working hard for years to secure federal funding for the I-69 Ohio River Crossing project to fill a critical final gap in the nation's transportation infrastructure as it links I-69 between Kentucky and Indiana over the Ohio River. This is the type of project which will mitigate traffic congestion, improve overall roadway safety, and significantly leverage non-federal dollars. Type of project where federal infrastructure dollars should be focused. We have an experienced panel here with leaders representing voices across the commercial trucking and bus industries. So I thank all of you for your willingness to testify here today and for your contributions to our dialogue. I now recognize Ranking Member Peters for any opening remarks he might have.
Well, thank you, Chairman Young, and thank you to our esteemed witnesses for being here with us here today. Today, we'll be hearing from the trucking and motor coach industries and workforce about the day-to-day challenges they face and how Congress can come together to hopefully address them. Our nation's truck drivers are the backbone of our economy. These frontline workers spend long hours, often away from their families, at all times of day and night, transporting goods across the country to America's communities. In fact, in Michigan, over 80% of our communities depend exclusively on trucks to move their goods, especially in those rural, hard-to-reach corners of our state. It's not an exaggeration to say that the trucking industry touches every American's daily life each and every day. That's especially true for Americans who have made trucking their career. There are nearly 250,000 trucking jobs in Michigan alone, making up 1 in 15 jobs throughout my state. From long and short-haul drivers to mechanics, dispatchers, logistics coordinators, these jobs provide key opportunities for Michiganders. And I'm committed to making sure that these jobs live up to their promise for Michiganders by providing fair wages, health care, and retirement benefits. And that's why I'm proud to have one of the foremost leaders of that fight here to testify today, Teamsters President Sean O'Brien. Mr. O'Brien and members of this panel know today very well the single most important factor in success of our truck drivers and this industry, as well as for road users across the country, is safety. And I believe this committee must prioritize safety in the next surface transportation reauthorization bill for both truckers and those who share the road with, from the deployment of advanced safety technologies and driver assistance systems to investing in safer streets, stronger bridges, to tackling truck parking issues and defending the driver's access to rest and bathrooms, and to addressing both fraud and theft as well. I look forward to hearing from our witnesses today on how they think Congress and the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration can tackle these issues and how we can ensure the FMCSA follows through on effective enforcement. I know the FMCSA will need resources and direction from Congress to do this, and I hope we can work across the aisle to make it happen. And finally, I want to acknowledge that today's trucking industry, as well as all freight and multimodal industries, is facing incredibly challenging economic environment with this administration's chaotic approach to tariffs. This doesn't just impact truckers and consumers. Changing rules, raising prices, and economic uncertainty impacts the manufacturers who build the trucks that move our goods and keep our drivers safe. In Michigan, our robust commercial vehicle manufacturing supply chain relies on cross-border trade with Canada and with a global supply chain. Many of these businesses have been forced to consider laying off workers or pausing investments due to a lack of certainty created by constantly shifting tariff policies. We can and should pursue policies to create commercial trucking manufacturing jobs here at home, but continued chaos will only serve to harm U.S. manufacturers, consumers, and our intermodal freight system. I am certainly looking forward to learning more about the challenges in this space as well from each of our panelists today. Thank you again for our witnesses for being here today and for your contributions to this industry that critically support the American economy. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Peters. Senator Cantwell, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to you and Senator Peters for holding this important hearing. It's a very important issue in general, our transportation network, and certainly moving forward on a surface transportation bill. In Washington, our state, our economy runs on ports and runs on trade and relies on the efficient movement of those goods. Trucks carrying a majority of freight in our state, moving nearly $400 billion worth of goods every year. So the industry's contribution to our economy cannot be underestimated. We must emphasize the importance, as my colleague from Michigan just did, on the safety of commercial vehicles. Last year, we had 54 fatal accidents in the state of Washington involving large trucks. These incidents have devastating impacts on the families and the communities. And just this past weekend, we saw a serious one with environmental consequences. A fuel truck crashed off Highway 101, spilling 3,000 gallons of diesel gasoline, jeopardizing tap water for 19,000 people and damaging vulnerable salmon habitat. So as we consider the Surface Transportation Act, yes, safety must be a priority for that. We know the cost of increase of transportation goods are being felt by consumers. My colleague just mentioned that as well. Delays due to congestion add more than $100 billion to the cost of moving goods every year. And that is why in the bipartisan infrastructure bill, I made sure everybody knew freight can't wait. If we don't have freight moving, we lose our competitiveness as a nation. And that is why the MEGA program, the INFRA program, and the Ports Grant program are all about eliminating the bottlenecks that happen in transportation that mean we can't get our product to market in a timely fashion. 34,000 truck drivers in the state of Washington are essential to that freight network, and the amount of freight moved by trucks across our state is expected to increase in the next 20 years. So we must ensure that drivers have fair wages, access to safe resting places, and high-quality training programs. And in addition, we got to get rid of the high cost of tariffs and the impact that they're having on our economy. Proposed tariffs on trucks and truck parts could increase the cost of a new truck by $35,000. And on top of that, fluctuations in freight volumes as business scramble to respond to on-again, off-again policies have also caused uncertainty for truck drivers. Last month, the Port of Seattle and Tacoma reported 20% fewer truck visits to the port compared to June the previous year. So we obviously are seeing the impact at our ports. So Congress must do everything we can to help in this effort. So thank you, Mr. Chairman, and look forward to working with you and the ranking member on these important surface transportation acts. And we'll be back to ask questions after the witnesses. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Cantwell. We're going to dive right in. I'd like to introduce our witnesses for today. Each of them has extensive knowledge about the truck and motor coach industries. Our first witness is Mr. Chris Spear, President and CEO of the American Trucking Associations. He's his own extensive experience in transportation and public policy, having held senior positions at Hyundai Motor Company, Honeywell International, and served as the Assistant Secretary of Labor for Policy at the U.S. Department of Labor. Welcome, sir. Our second witness is Louie Pew, Executive Vice President of the Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association. Before joining OIDA, Mr. Pew was an owner-operator for nearly 23 years, and he earned the Distinguished Million Miles Safe Drivers Award. Welcome, sir. Our third witness today is Mr. Fred Ferguson. He is President and CEO of the American Bus Association. Mr. Ferguson also serves as the President of the National Bus Traffic Association and the ABA Foundation. He has over 15 years of experience in public policy across the government, nonprofit, and private sectors. Welcome, sir. And then lastly, but not leastly, our final witness is Mr. Sean O'Brien. He is General President of the International Brotherhood of Teamsters. Mr. O'Brien's a fourth-generation Teamster, a union that represents over 1 million workers across the United States of America and Canada. It's a privilege to have you here, sir. Welcome. So we will now recognize Mr. Spear to deliver his opening statement. Mr. Spear, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman Young, Ranking Member Peters, and members of the subcommittee. I want to thank you for the opportunity to testify today on behalf of the American Trucking Associations. For over 90 years, ATA has represented an industry that today employs 8.5 million of the hardest working men and women in the country. We appreciate your commitment to safety. Every American benefits from a modern, safe, and efficient transportation network. It is even more essential to the 3.5 million truck drivers who are indispensable to our way of life. Roads and bridges are their shop floor. ATA was among the first to support passage of the landmark bipartisan infrastructure law, which boosted highway funding by 38%. Unfortunately, rising construction costs and red tape have eroded the impact of federal grants. One consequence is record high congestion, now costing our economy more than $109 billion, the equivalent of 435,000 truck drivers sitting idle for an entire year. The next infrastructure bill has got to not only alleviate those bottlenecks, but prioritize other critical projects like truck parking. There is currently one parking space for every 11 truckers. Expanding parking access is not only the right thing to do for road safety, it's the bare minimum we owe our drivers, particularly women drivers, who deserve a secure, well-lit place to rest. Trucking offers a pathway to rewarding careers. That was the motivation behind the Safe Driver Apprenticeship Pilot Program established by Chairman Young and full committee ranking member Cantwell, which allowed qualified 18, 19, and 20-year-olds to operate safely in interstate commerce. Every member of this panel should be invested in creating pathways for 18 to 20-year-olds to operate safely in interstate commerce and to be able to access good-paying jobs in the trucking industry. However, self-serving, factless claims that there is no driver shortage undermine the serious work of this committee. Driver pay does not go up 19% during a freight recession unless there is a shortage of qualified drivers. You may also hear today about how the Biden-Sue independent contractor rule helps our nation's 350,000 independent truckers. I encourage members of this committee to actually ask the independent contractors about that, because they're going to tell you that this rule takes away their freedom of choice to be their own boss and to grow their own business. The trucking industry goes to great lengths to keep roadways safe. Every year, motor carriers invest $14 billion in safety technologies and driver training, including apprenticeships. AT is ready to partner with the subcommittee and the DOT on deploying proven technologies that focus drivers' awareness as well as mitigate and reduce crashes. Groundbreaking developments in the autonomous vehicle space hold future promise for improving safety while enhancing, not displacing, the invaluable role of truck drivers, our industry's greatest asset. The most important safety action we can take is ensuring that unsafe drivers do not get behind the wheel in the first place. That requires drivers being proficient in the English language, as well as proven drug testing protocols. As more states legalize recreational marijuana and opioids plague our communities, federal acceptance of both oral and hair testing are vital to keep unsafe drivers off the road. Another issue that should unite us is addressing the meteoric rise of cargo theft. This economic and national security threat has exploded in the last few years, with annual losses now totaling a staggering $35 billion. To protect our supply chain and employees, we need legislation to combat fraud and empower federal law enforcement to take the lead. ATA testified 25 times before Congress, helping shape the current highway bill. Today is our 7th hearing in just 7 months. We fully understand your responsibility is the safety title, arguably the most important title in the highway bill. This effort is transformational opportunity. It's not only going to help our industry, but the entire supply chain and our nation's economy. Thank you again for your leadership, and I look forward to answering all of your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Spear. Mr. Pew, you are recognized for 5 minutes, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman Young and Ranking Member Peters and members of the subcommittee. I'm Louie Pew, the Executive Vice President of the Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association. From the U.S. Army to running my own trucking business, trucking is the only thing I've ever done my entire adult life, with over 2.5 million safe miles of driving. OIDA is the largest national association representing small business truckers and professional drivers. We have approximately 150,000 members across the country who operate 240,000 pieces of equipment. Our mission is to promote and protect the interests of members on any issues that impact their safety and their success. The Trump administration has embraced a new approach to developing trucking policy that prioritizes the needs of truckers. It began in February when the US DOT reopened its public comment period on broker transparency rulemaking that was launched in 2020 in response to an OOIDA petition. It continued in April with an executive order addressing OOIDA's request to enforce existing English language rules proficiency that have long been ignored. And just last month, Secretary Duffy announced 9 major initiatives, 9, to improve working conditions for truckers that directly addressed many long-standing driver concerns, including withdrawing the controversial speed limiter mandate. These steps are welcome and long overdue and a departure from the old ways of Washington. They demonstrate regulators are finally prioritizing truckers over corporate mega fleets, shippers, trial lawyers, and safety advocates. To be clear, OOIDA is a nonpartisan organization. We have a reputation of telling you how it is, and we don't pull any punches. But we also give credit where credit's due and advocate tirelessly on behalf of our members. Truckers now need lawmakers to embrace the new approach the White House has taken with as much energy and resolve. I assure you this can be done in a bipartisan manner and promote highway safety that improves driver recruitment, retention, and increases supply chain efficiency. In fact, many of OOIDA's proposals for the highway bill already achieve these objectives. This includes enhancing driver training, improving restroom access, and combating freight fraud. More broadly, efforts to expand truck parking capacity, eliminate the federal law that prevents truckers from being guaranteed overtime pay, and stopping the unsafe increases of truck size and weights. These have all garnered significant bipartisan support. While truckers are thrilled that folks in Washington are finally listening to their needs, others in the industry will resist this new approach. They want to return to the old way of doing things when maximizing corporate profits and overregulating small businesses, dodging responsibility for improving working conditions for drivers took precedence. For example, large carriers will oppose OOIDA's efforts to prohibit predatory lease-to-own scams. By design, these leave truckers broke and empty-handed. Law enforcement will again to attempt to put trackers on truckers, which has been soundly rejected by the industry. Trial lawyers will pursue a totally unnecessary increase in minimum insurance requirements to destroy small business trucking. And brokers will fight tooth and nail against compliance with broker transparency compliance, which is a rule that's already on the books. Let me remind you, the old approach simply doesn't work. Policies that large carriers swore would improve safety, like electronic logging devices, have proven to be totally ineffective. The pilot program for teenage drivers has been a colossal taxpayer-funded failure, and its enrollment numbers tell the story. As I've outlined in my testimony, Congress has the ability to make the next highway bill the most pro-trucker, pro-safety bill in history, but only if you commit to prioritizing the needs of truckers. Thank you for this opportunity, and I look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you for your words, Mr. Pew. Mr. Ferguson, you're now recognized for 5 minutes.
On behalf of the American Bus Association and the $90 billion motor coach and group travel industry, thank you for your bipartisan leadership today. The private motor coach industry powered 40 billion passenger miles in 2024, led by 1,800 operators, 90% of whom are small businesses. We are the most efficient and sustainable form of transportation, driven by equipment innovation and the removal of up to 35 cars per trip. We generated $90 billion in economic activity in 2024, and our industry employs more than 500,000 Americans. We moved approximately 10% of Amtrak passengers, and you're going to be seeing motor coaches on airport tarmacs more and more as buses are being a viable substitute to regional jets. With this reach, we will be a key player in the upcoming mega decade of events and playing a crucial role in generating that $100 billion in economic activity that travel, live events, and the sporting events will bring to the table. Most importantly, The committee should view us as a strategic transportation reserve. We answer the call for natural disaster evacuations, the movement of emergency personnel and aid, and troop movements of the U.S. military when it's required. Moving to the hearing, safety is a core pillar of ABA and has been throughout our 99 years of existence. Upholding a rigorous safety ethic is part of ABA's Code of Ethics, and unsatisfactory members are asked to leave the association. As Congress reauthorizes surface transportation programs, ABA offers 5 core recommendations to ensure the motor coach industry remains safe and competitive within the national transportation network. Number 1, hours of service. The motor coach industry operates under fundamentally different service models than the freight sector. Passenger and group service involves unique scheduling, rest periods, and safety considerations. Applying a uniform framework does not recognize the functional differences of each sector, and we urge Congress to affirm the importance of maintaining distinct hours of service regulations. Number 2, minimum insurance requirements. ABA supports maintaining the current federal minimum insurance levels. The motor coach industry operates under ongoing and rigorous federal oversight, with every company subjected to regular FMCSA inspections. This high level of accountability, paired with industry-led efforts, such as the ABA Bus Industry Safety Council and the Motor Coach Safety Action Plan, has contributed to a steady decline in passenger fatalities. Raising minimums would likely lead to reduced service availability across the transportation network without any clear safety benefit. Number 3, systems modernization. ABA encourages Congress to modernize the safety measurement system and the compliance, safety, and accountability methodologies. The current data is skewed across sectors, and we recommend creating distinct peer groups for passenger carriers and adjusting data models to reflect size, seasonality, and operating risks. Number 4, the speed limiter. As been discussed, the announcement by Secretary Duffy to reconsider or withdraw the speed limiter rule is a welcome development. We encourage the full withdrawal of this proposal in recognition of the motor coach industry's strong safety record and need for operational flexibility. Number 5, access to federally funded transit facilities. Private motor coach operators play an essential role in connecting cities, particularly rural communities. We work with transit hubs and train service providers, as mentioned, and we are a major part of the federal 5311F program. Yet our industry faces barriers accessing publicly funded facilities, which is a current requirement of the law. ABA calls for stronger enforcement of reasonable access and better transparency in facility use policies. In closing, ABA is committed to working closely with this subcommittee, our membership, and FMCSA to uphold the highest standards of safety, accessibility, and reliability in motor coach operations. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ferguson. Mr. O'Brien, you're now recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Chairman Young, Ranking of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today on issues impacting the trucking and commercial bus industries. I'm Sean O'Brien, General President of the International Brotherhood of Teamsters. The Teamsters Union represents more than 1.3 million workers since 1903. That's 122 years. Our membership includes hundreds of thousands who start their workday behind a steering wheel of a commercial vehicle. I am personally familiar with the subject of this hearing, and not simply as General President of the Teamsters. I started my apprenticeship program at 18 years old in the rigging industry in South Boston, where I was an apprentice rigger, then a low-bed driver, hauled heavy equipment both interstate and intrastate. The Surface Transportation Reauthorization is an opportunity for bipartisan action. Together, we must create economic opportunity and improve the lives of millions of Americans. The Teamsters look forward to working closely with the committee to write a bill that prioritizes workers, prioritizes public safety, and protection of jobs. For decades, the Teamsters have led the way in making the trucking industry a better and safer place to work. Teamster drivers earn wages and benefits that ensure our members can support their families and retire with dignity. Our union provides high-quality training to drivers. We regularly induct members into the UPS Circle of Honor and many other driver safety programs recognizing 25 to 30 years of safe driving without an accident. I'd like to start by talking about the state of our industry. You've all heard about so-called driver shortage, and I think you just heard one of my colleagues testify to that. We've been told we can solve this problem by forcing drivers to work longer hours and operate heavier trucks. At UPS, for example, one of our members may spend years working another position, another classification before a job operating a tractor-trailer becomes available. Once our members do get behind the wheel, most remain in these good-paying, reliable, and safe positions until retirement. At carriers like T-Force and ABF, Teamsters only experience a 10 to 12% turnover ratio. Union drivers have the best wages, health care, and retirement securities. In Teamster shops, workers are incentivized to stay. So-called driver shortages do not occur. To help make this a reality for more workers, the Teamsters urge Congress to invest in high-quality CDL training. Sadly, predatory CDL programs are widespread in this country. They take money from students who then graduate, unable to pass a skills test or operate a vehicle safely. Teamster locals in 20 states certify members and the public as CDL drivers, usually at no cost to the students. Let's grow these programs for more American drivers. The expansion and creation of competitive grant programs under the DOT that are accessible to Teamsters training would help significantly. Federal action is also overdue to regulate autonomous vehicles. Allowing the unfettered operation of AVs is a threat to public safety and to good-paying jobs in the trucking industry. The surface reauthorization presents an opportunity for Congress to take decisive worker-first action on AVs. I'd also like to draw the subcommittee's attention to the growth of dangerous trucking business models. Amazon's trucking services are largely provided by its freight service partners, better known as FSPs. FSPs are contractors who in turn hire drivers. These small motor carriers exist as unique entities with individual DOT identification numbers. This means that the government cannot connect the dots between individual carriers to establish a pattern of unsafe behavior across a fleet contracted by Amazon and many others. This inability to trace unsafe behavior is critical when we know that Amazon FSP drivers were cited for violations at a rate of 70 times higher than UPS Teamsters. The Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration should be directed to collect consolidated safety metrics for companies using contracted fleets. They should also conduct a study on the safety of Amazon's local last-mile delivery service using vehicles under 10,000 pounds. The Teamsters call on the committee to reject policies that would reduce safety on our roads. This would include a rejection of weakening hours of service regulations or permitting longer, heavier trucks. Allowing corporations to push drivers to high levels of fatigue or to operate more dangerous vehicles will result in unnecessary accidents, injuries, and death. It is important that Congress is aware that one of the obstacles we face in providing the benefits of Teamsters representation is employer abuse of labor law and refusing to bargain in good faith. Employers drag out negotiations for years and deprive workers of better wages and safer working conditions. This is not a bug, it's a feature in our labor codes. The Teamsters wholeheartedly endorse the Faster Labor Contracts Act. This bill requires employers to bargain with workers within 10 days of voting to form the union. For the record, I want to thank Ranking Member Peters and Senator Marino for their co-sponsorship of this important legislation. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today. I look forward to your questions as well.
Thank you, Mr. O'Brien. We're now going to turn to member questions, and I will begin. I'll begin with the Drive Safe Act. We've had some of our witnesses mention this legislation, now law. This is something, an issue I encountered, and I do think there are labor shortages as it relates to drivers of our large trucks in this country, and I've encountered it throughout the state of Indiana. I would travel around Indiana. We are right next to some major metropolitan areas in other states. Next to Lawrenceburg, Indiana, is Cincinnati. Next to New Albany and Jeffersonville, Indiana, is Louisville, Kentucky. Next to East Chicago and Gary is Chicago, Illinois. And in each of these locations, I discovered that there were trucking companies attempting to move things not only within Indiana, they had great facility to do that and had enough drivers, because drivers could be 18 if delivering things within Indiana. But to go across state lines, you have to be 21. That struck me as someone who believes in the power of markets as absolutely absurd. I looked in the Constitution. It does still say that our job is to facilitate interstate commerce. And so I began working on this with all sorts of stakeholders here. And we finally got this signed into law after working on it for a number of years. And case closed, right? No, that's not how it works. We had some real challenges with implementation with the last administration. The Biden administration imposed a number of additional burdensome requirements going well beyond congressional intent, and it has severely hampered implementation and participation. So we're going to give this another shot, but we want to do so in an informed way. So, Mr. Spear, from your perspective at ATA, if implemented as Congress intended, how would this program help to bring younger, qualified drivers into the industry?
We're going to utilize that interstate commerce element that you mentioned, which is, in your full right to emphasize, 49 states have legislation on the books allowing an 18-year-old to drive. Now, a little short drive in Indiana, but in California, Texas, you can get a pretty good clip in, right? So there are no training standards. There are no performance metrics attached to any of that. What you did in this pilot program, and at the time, Chair Cantwell agreed to a national pilot program to bring 3,000 of these 18, 19, 20-year-olds in and properly teach them how to safely and responsibly drive. Okay, I think we would all agree on that. Training is key. None of the 49 states have that. Your pilot program that was enacted has 400 hours of training, of which you have to have a supervised driver, experienced driver in the cab with you. It has 14 metrics attached to it. This is a step towards safety, unlike the 49 states, not a step away. The reason that it got poor attendance is because the last administration put a whole number of requirements into the pilot that you didn't authorize, including inward-facing cameras. Okay, you already have supervision with the experienced driver in the cab. So I know you and I have some differences, Navy, Army. I was just down in Benning last Friday. My son commissioned as a captain. He's a company commander. 236 18, 19-year-olds preparing to be infantrymen.
Yeah.
Okay, they're gonna go do the unthinkable. Hopefully they don't, but if they have to, they're trained to be the best. If we can do that for 18 and 20-year-olds, I'm pretty sure we can teach them how to cross state lines in a Class 8.
Yeah. So, you know, it's an interesting factoid that the 18 to 21 cohort actually has lower insurance rates than slightly over 21 for whatever anomalous reason. So it might suggest, I'm speculating here, that group who's motivated at the age of, say, 19 to get this sort of training is self-selecting, right? They're very motivated, very conscientious, and thus, on balance, maybe safer. Maybe
Chairman,
even
I would also
safer.
say,
but nonetheless, we baked 400 additional hours in. We're going to get it right this time. I'm going to move on to Mr. Pew because I did indicate in good faith that I wanted to continue soliciting feedback from others. And I know, I believe from your comments, you have expressed some reservations, Mr. Pew, about the experience of these drivers and the potential of driving into new terrain. So I'll give you an opportunity. Do you believe that the requirements related to complete performance benchmarks for driving in different areas and at different times of the day, including on the interstate, in city traffic, on rural 2 lanes, and evening driving, are unsatisfactory?
I think that we need a pathway for 18 to 21 years old to drive truck. I was an 18-year-old and went in the United States Army and drove truck. That was my pathway. Went to the service, got my CDL, and started driving at 21. I do also think at 18 to 21 years old, I did a lot of dumb things. Even when I was in the military, and you have oversight when you're in the military, there's other people there to guide you, you know. But with that also being said, I think what we have to think about here is how we do this. Because even with 400 hours of training, and say you drive around the state of Indiana or the state of Florida, what happens when you go to the Rocky Mountains and you've never seen the Rocky Mountains or in the Appalachian Mountains? I think a much safer, better way to handle this, and I agree with you, it makes no sense that a kid who lives, say, in Louisville, Kentucky, can't just cross the state line, or a kid in Indianapolis can't go maybe to Chicago. You know, I understand what you're saying, go to Gary, but he can't cross to Chicago. I think what we should think about is 150 air mile radiuses like we do in agricultural and the short haul. That way these kids who are from 18 to 21 years old, they learn how to operate this equipment in these trucks in areas that they know where they're from and they know where there are. As far as inward facing cameras, I don't think that has anything to do with it, because it's funny that we don't want inward facing cameras for young kids that are 18 to 21, but we want to have them in this new independent contractor law for owner-operators who probably have 20 or 30 years' experience. That's okay.
All right. Thank you, sir. Thanks for your comments. We'll continue to work on this. We want to get this thing right. So I'll recognize Mr. Peters for some questions, and we'll move to Chairman Cruz, who just joined us.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. My first question is for both Mr. Spear as well as Mr. O'Brien. I have long been a champion of the safety benefits of autonomous vehicle technology and what it could offer to the transportation system if they're deployed responsibly and transparently. In your testimony, both of you mentioned the need for a federal policy framework for autonomous vehicles to set the rules for the road. Mr. O'Brien, you brought it up in your opening comments as well. I agree that we need action in this space, but to do that, we're going to need to make sure that we're meeting the needs of workers, of innovators, and Americans who expect safe roads. So my question for both of you is, can each of you please expand on perhaps the top 2 or 3 principles that you believe must be addressed by Congress or regulators in a federal autonomous vehicle framework? Mr. O'Brien, would you kick that off, please?
Yes, I appreciate this opportunity. Our biggest fight whenever we go to the bargaining table with any and all industries is automation. Automation is a real threat to American jobs, and we feel strongly that the biggest threat to the trucking industry is autonomous commercial vehicles not requiring human operators. So that's a priority, to make certain that we have human operators in these vehicles. And I know some people think it's not coming for a long time, but either way, whether it comes tomorrow or 20 years from now, we have to be prepared. And protecting good middle-class jobs is important. You know, I think there was a statistic sent out here today, 3.5 million drivers right now. Well, if we replace 3.5 million drivers, where do they go and what do they do? And more importantly, it's a public safety issue. We've talked to many law enforcement groups regarding their concerns regarding autonomous commercial vehicles. And it's a real concern if you have a family of 4 driving down the road. Right now, the best computer and the best reaction is a human operator. And we've all seen how in certain situations where technology has failed in testing of such vehicles with autonomous drivers. And lastly, we talk about all this investment that we make in infrastructure. And if we allow autonomous vehicles to be heavier, longer, and no requirement or expanded requirements of when they can travel on the roads, that is going to be a detrimental effect to ridges, off-ramps, and roads moving forward. So we think those are the top 3 threats. More importantly, it's the jobs. Where do we put these people that have depended upon driving commercial vehicles, providing goods and services to this country? And I think there's no better example than what we went through during the pandemic, where truck drivers, regardless of whether you were union or non-union or independent, we were all looked upon as essential workers providing goods and services to this country. And we are not assets. We are human beings that provided these goods and services so that this country could keep moving. And I think we should be appreciated, not forgotten, and the investment should be made to protect these jobs, not replace them.
Very good. Mr. Spear.
Yeah, I think you, Ranking Member, know full well there's 5 levels of automation. The first 4 require a driver, engaged in the operation of the commercial vehicle. Level 5 is driverless. We're a long ways from deploying that widespread. We're going to see some, operations down in the Southwest where it makes sense. You know, the weather is accommodating for that sort of activity. Maybe not so much in Wyoming and Nebraska where I'm from. So, you know, you're going to see this crop up. But I think to point out, the levels 1 through 4 really improve safety performance, not just for the company and the driver, but for the motoring public. There's some really good elements of technology that we need to continue to foster. Level 5, before we even get to that, I think is important. This also comes down to the driver shortage. If you believe it or you don't believe it, it's a fact. It's a fact. We watch it nationwide. We have the largest number of drivers under our membership. We know the demand for these drivers. And if there is a shortage, the inclusion of such technology, even if it's level 5, is not going to be displacing anyone's jobs. So this is a red herring. It's a baseless threat that I don't believe in, and our industry's proven that. Last thing, in terms of automation, the modes are intermodal now. Okay, my industry includes all ports. We support them. Rail, we're locked arms now. The automation of ports, if you looked at the ILA negotiations that just happened for the East Coast and Gulf Coast ports, and include the ILWU on the West Coast, 65 ports in the United States, and not one of them ranks in the top 50 in the world for productivity, efficiency. We cannot compete. We cannot get the throughput that the president wants in and out of these ports if we don't utilize technology. And you can do it without displacing union jobs. So we need both, is the point.
Very good. I know I'm a little time, but Mr. Chairman has granted one additional question, which I appreciate, for Mr. O'Brien. In your testimony, you describe a shipping model currently being utilized by Amazon that creates avenues for avoiding accountability at FMCSA. I've raised similar concerns with the National Labor Relations Board regarding reports of Amazon retaliating against unionization activities by delivery service partners. Just a quick question, given recent changes, what are the difficulties you face at the National Labor Relations Board which have impacted your ability to either prevent or address instances of retaliation or other labor abuses in the industry?
Well, I think the National Labor Relations Board, and I've had this conversation with many Democrats, many Republicans, and someone who organizes workers every single day for the last 30 years, the system is broken, and it's been broken for a long time. And we usually try and avoid the NLRB at all costs because it's antiquated, and it is also too long of a time frame to get any type of resolution. But when you're talking about Amazon and DSP models and the FSP models, you're talking about an employer who has skirted obligations of direct employer and claims that they have nothing to do with these subcontractors, yet they are forced to buy the equipment from Amazon or lease the equipment from Amazon. They're forced to follow the policies and procedures, but they don't go on Amazon's books as it comes to recording safety violations or anything else. And there's proven statistics out there as a result of that. But on a bigger scale, we got a favorable decision in California regarding the DSP model under the current acting general counsel of the NLRB. But with that said, the bigger picture is the reason why we are working bipartisan to pass the Fair Labor Standards contract to make organizing a choice that doesn't involve any type of retribution, retaliation for direct employees. I mean, I think we are going to be fighting the subcontractor model for years to come, or independent contractor model. And look, we're not against anybody for being an owner-operator, trying to be their own boss. I think, that's been around for 30, 40, 50 years. What we're against is these corporations that are exploiting workers through a scam system that doesn't provide good opportunity, that has a 150% turnover ratio in the industry. And if there is such, and my colleague talked about driver shortages, there's such driver shortages or turnovers in industries, you've got to ask yourself, there's something wrong. And that's something wrong that we identify with is not being a direct employee, not having the rights to collectively bargain.
We're going to move on.
Not having the best benefits in the industry.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Yeah. Senator Cruz, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to each of the witnesses for being here. I want to go back, Mr. Spear and Mr. O'Brien, to the topic that Senator Peters raised, which is autonomous vehicles, which is obviously an incredibly important topic, one that impacts over 3 million jobs, one that impacts our economy profoundly. Mr. O'Brien, I wanted to give you an opportunity to respond to what Mr. Spear said, particularly talking about levels 1 through 4 of automation and what your view and the Teamsters' view is on levels of automation that fall short of removing the driver. What is y'all's view on that?
I'm not familiar with 1 through 5, what he's talking about, but I can talk about the threat. You know, we talk about automation, and I drove a truck my entire life. I drove oversized loads. I hauled heavy equipment, both interstate and interstate. And, you know, there's no better brain or better computer than your brain or your instinct. Now, we understand technology is coming, and we're not trying to impede any type of technology that is going to make business more efficient. Our sole goal is to protect these jobs and to make certain that people that don't have the opportunity to go to college, that don't have the opportunity to get high, you know, white-collar jobs, have the opportunity in the trucking industry. I'm a 4th-generation truck driver, and I've seen firsthand how important it is to maintain these jobs at the highest level. If we try and replace human operators with computers, I think, one, it's going to be detrimental to recruiting new drivers, which further would give credibility to a driver shortage because the uncertainty of the industry. Secondly, again, it's going to be such a public safety risk. I mean, do you want your family driving in a car, a minivan, next to a vehicle not being operated by a human? I don't. I have 2 boys, and I, you know, would hate to think that they're vulnerable to a malfunction in a computer. And lastly, the infrastructure. I mean, how many times, and you've been around a long time, Senator, well-respected, have you fought long and hard to improve infrastructure, especially in your state? Now, if we allow all these autonomous vehicles to run wild, it's going to destroy that infrastructure that we, as taxpayers, have all invested in over the last several decades. And I think the most important thing, and I'll say it again, is the jobs. Where do these people go if you eliminate 3 million jobs? And people may not think, or there's testimony here, it's not happening for a long time. Don't kid yourself. If big tech could have this done tomorrow, and these corporations could operate without human operators, without paying wages, benefits, that would happen tomorrow.
So, Mr. O'Brien, Mr. Spear, both of y'all have called for a federal framework for autonomous vehicles. I want to ask each of you, what are the most important 2 or 3 elements in any federal framework? Mr. Spear, you can go first.
Well, I think interstate commerce. You've got to protect it. We need one standard, not 50. Right now, you have 16 states that have automated vehicle laws on the books. We're developing technologies that I think are going to really be forward-leaning in terms of productivity and what it can do for the supply chain in levels 1 through 4. We're a ways out from full autonomy. You might see it, as I said earlier, in the Southwest, but nationwide, I just don't see it in the near future. But to get there, you've got to develop it.
A ways out? How would you quantify that?
I'd say probably 10, 15 years out. But it's always described as threat to jobs, threat to jobs. I go back to the ports example. 65 ports in this country, not one of them ranks in the top 50 for efficiency and productivity. This president wants to take things to a whole nother level. Grow this economy. We're going to need both jobs and autonomy. We're going to need technologies to get that throughput in and out of those ports and on our roads to where it needs to go. You're going to need both those hard-working union jobs, and you're going to need technology to assist them. This is assuming the economy remains stagnant, that we've got to wrap our bubble wrap around all these jobs to protect them. No, we don't. They're gonna be there. We need more throughput to grow the economy. We're just not gonna be able to do it by adding more people. You're gonna have to add technology to get efficiency. It's that simple. You need both.
So, Mr. O'Brien, top 2 or 3 elements in a federal framework for AVs.
We need human operators in these vehicles. And if it's true what he's saying, if you're gonna replace a human operator in a commercial vehicle, where does that person go? Where is that job gone? And I'm all for efficiencies. I don't think, I don't want you to think that we are not for efficiencies. And I'm familiar with the ILA agreement on the East Coast. I sit on the Port Authority board at the Massachusetts Port Authority, which you know as well. But there's efficiencies built in there, but there's also job protections as a result of implementation of this technology, which further gives credibility on when you sit down and negotiate a collective bargaining agreement, you can embrace the technology and also the efficiencies, but you also can protect and create new jobs as a result of this technology. So I think second priority would be, upon implementation, you create opportunities and jobs as a result of this technology.
Thank you. Okay, final question, Mr. Spear. The Texas Department of Public Safety has reported that you can buy a Mexican CDL for as little as $2,500. Fraudulent licenses mean we don't know if these drivers are qualified to be on the road. What should Congress do to make sure that only qualified, properly vetted drivers are operating on our roads?
Well, I think you're absolutely right, and it is happening, and it's a big problem. We talked about English language proficiency, making certain that they can communicate in the English language. That's critical. People out there taking advantage of B1 drivers, coming in, drop a load. They're using them for weeks to move freight in the United States. That's illegal. It's called cabotage. You can buy illegal CDLs, you know, on the corner. This is not uncommon. We need federal enforcement. We need to work with state enforcement and local to understand those credentials and take these drivers off the road. They have no business being out there. We've seen foreign drivers that don't speak English that are having no insurance whatsoever and operating shoddy equipment out there. That's the kind of riffraff we need to get out. That's not the image any of us want. Okay, we're very proud of our industries and what we do, but that kind of thing happens and there's an accident. That's not a reflection of our efforts. We need good coordination with our federal regulators to ensure that these folks are taken off the road.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to recognize Senator Moreno for questions. Senator?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for doing this hearing. I thought maybe, Mr. O'Brien, I'd start with you. There was some conversation about tariffs, not that this is a hearing about tariffs, but let's hit that real quick. You care, I think when I look in your eyes and I've met with you, you actually care deeply about making certain that we have a growing, thriving middle class in this country. I mean, that's not an act. That's something that you believe in your heart and soul.
Yeah, I think someone referred to me as a, hold on, I gotta write it down, as a self-promoting union boss in one of their articles, but I'm not a self-promoting union boss. I'm a truck driver from a middle-class family that appreciates and embraces the preservation of the middle class.
Right. So when we think about tariffs, we can go out and find the cheapest labor on earth, slave wages in China, massively subsidized industries, and there's this mentality that somehow tariffs are bad for America, when in reality, wouldn't you say that it's good to have trade barriers to put American workers on a level playing field with workers around the world?
Yeah, I mean, there's no secret what our position is as a union on tariffs, and I know there's a concern with when these tariffs are implemented, if they're implemented and when they're implemented, what effect is that going to have on the consumer? Now, we have to go back in history a little bit. Remember when we had plenty of industry in this country where we were producing goods and services, where we were manufacturing steel, and we were doing a lot of this work, and then these bad trade deals that happened in 1993 with NAFTA and everything else had an impact on jobs, and they went away, and our jobs and everything went overseas, and that level playing field was completely uneven to the American worker. Now, fast forward, where we want to repeal a lot of these trade deals, we want to impose these tariffs unilaterally, I believe, to what we're paying and what they should be paying. There's a concern that we're going to diminish jobs, and where is all this cost going to go? Now, we got to take a look. There's a lot of factors here. We got to take a look at excessive compensation with a lot of these CEOs and these corporations and their willingness to reward Wall Street instead of the people that work in these jobs. So we can have that debate as well on, hey, you know what, if these tariffs come in, take a little less in your own pocket, stop giving more to Wall Street, and just reward your workers and don't pass this cost on the consumers. The fear of the unknown is always the worst.
Ultimately, it's important, I think I'm hearing you say, which I agree with 100%, I just hope my colleagues listen to this, is that we want to have these jobs in America. That's very important because these are good working class jobs that allow a mom or a dad to be able to provide a living for their family, retired, debt-free. That's really important. So totally with you on that one. Let's dig a little deeper into this English requirement. Now, I wasn't born in this country. My mom made me learn English pretty quickly. And I don't think there's a lot of legal immigrants that think differently than I do. They believe that we should assimilate, learn English, learn the language. But what are the implications for you and your members when during the Biden years, you had 10 million people coming to this country illegally, a lot of them under the guise of independent contractors started becoming truck drivers. You had a giant spike that happened. These are people that spoke no English, had no idea of our traffic laws, and yet they were unleashed on our roads. What was it like for your members to be able to drive on the roads with people that, again, had no idea what they were doing, no idea about our safety requirements?
Well, I think it's extremely frightening, to be honest with you. You had a lot of trucking companies that were actively recruiting in foreign countries to bring people over here on those work visas, whatever they're called, and train them and put them on the roads, where they're not from this country, they don't know this language. So our members are very passionate. By the way, our membership of 1.3 million is well representative from first-generation immigrants who came over here the right way, who learned the language, learned the laws, obtained their CDLs properly, and went to work and everything else. But it was frightening times, and it still is. I mean, we heard a comment today about Mexican truck drivers coming over these borders and doing the cabotage. We are 100% in agreement. That shouldn't be happening. Matter of fact, we'd rather have Mexican drivers drop their trailers at the borders and let American companies pick them up and do the deliveries.
Yeah, I mean, so clearly that's something that should be in legislation. I'll switch over to you, Mr. Spear, real quickly. There's this conversation about, what's a threat to the trucking industry. I think we need to, maybe if you could briefly describe what it meant to the trucking industry to have the Congressional Review Act that eliminated the advanced car truck rule and what that meant. Because we forget that was a mere 6 or 7 weeks ago. What would that have meant to the industry if we had gone down the cliff of electrification on semis?
You would have witnessed consolidation in our industry that has never happened since 1980 during deregulation. I mean, the medium and small companies, 68% of our members are less than 100 trucks, 35% are less than 25 trucks. Those companies would be gone, because they can't have access to that kind of equipment because there's not enough of it under those rules. And it would be 3.5 times more than what they pay for a brand new diesel today, which, by the way, emits 98.5% less than what it did in 1988. So 60 trucks today emit what one truck emitted in 1988. That's how far we've come. We didn't need, the United States of California telling our industry operating in 50 states how to work with the EPA to get clean air and water. We're already doing that. So revoking these through the CRA, you just took off one of the biggest threats to our industry in a matter of 8 months. And it's now allowing us to do a whole host of other constructive things, such as the safety title. So I thank you for that vote.
No, it's great. And let's talk about, so Mr. Pew or Mr. Spear, if you want to answer, what does the one big beautiful bill and bonus depreciation mean to your industry? The ability to make an investment and have that be able to be depreciated. Is that positive or negative for you?
Yeah, well, we appreciate the big, beautiful bill and understand it. What we need to see happen now, though.
I'm talking about just the bonus depreciation, the ability to write off your equipment. Is that a net positive or net negative?
That's definitely a net positive bill, right off equipment for sure.
Right. So I just want to recap real quick to my Democrat colleagues: wrong on tariffs, wrong on immigration, wrong on EVs, and wrong on voting against the one big beautiful bill. And if my colleague, would you mind one more question? You would, bud? Okay. Always ask permission for my great colleague here from Nebraska. So one last question, Mr. Spear. What's the average age of the semi in America on the road, more or less?
Yeah, we assessed that a couple of years back, particularly in California, but nationally, 53% of the commercial vehicles operating in the country are 2010 or older.
And what level of autonomy do those have?
I'm sorry?
What level autonomy do they have?
Well, it's...
That would be level 0. These things have no safety technology. They're much worse emitters of, and what's keeping people from buying new cars? I'm going to answer my own question. This federal excise tax.
Absolutely.
12%. So if we can massively reduce the federal excise tax and allow people to open the door to buying new semis, talk real briefly, because I'm worrying on the patience of my colleague on taking over.
She's still nodding, so I think we're safe. But Senator Cantwell alluded to this in her opening statement, too. The added costs from the FET, the federal excise tax, by the way, this dates back to the Titanic sinking. This was put in place by Congress, coupled with a number of other provisions that no longer exist. Ours do. It's a 12% tax on trucks and trailers. And it's about $35,000 for both total. each purchase. So, if you've got somebody out there that's buying, say, 1,800 new tractors, for a third of their fleet that they turn over every year, that's $65 million. That's real money. So that's going to the federal government, not to them. So we would argue for repealing this. It was put in place to fund trench warfare in World War I. It's outdated. We can take that money. It's our money, not the government's. We can invest it in training, pay, equipment. Get that brand new equipment out there and replace the old stuff. You'll reduce emissions by 83% just by putting new diesels out on the road.
Great. Thank you. So recognize Senator Lujan.
Thank you, Mr. Spear, just last month I had the honor of meeting with the Gunter family from New Mexico, and if you know who this family is, you'll know of the tragic loss of two brothers, Brad and Chad. Now, they were killed when a truck drove off of Interstate 40 and crashed through their blacksmith shop. What they shared with me is that the truck's cruise control was set to 65 miles per hour, and the brakes were never applied as the truck ran into a blacksmith shop. Technology exists to prevent this, which makes us even harder. Can you explain how automatic emergency braking works and how it could be used to prevent tragedies like the one the Gunter family had to suffer, to prevent this suffering from happening again?
Yeah, I will. Actually, this dates back to when I was with Hyundai Motor Company, and all the motor companies, I was the signature for that, for Hyundai, signed on voluntarily adopting AEB on all new models. So I'm very familiar. This dates back to the Obama administration. So this technology works. It's been in place, not just in passenger vehicles, but in the commercial sector. I would say our industry is lagging a bit behind. There needs to be a lot more testing. This was a rule that was not removed from the Federal Registry for regulations, the regulatory agenda. Secretary Duffy kept that in place. So I do think there's promise there for both cars and trucks. I'm also mindful, Senator, that 2/3 of the accidents that involve commercial vehicles are caused by passenger vehicles. So I want to be clear about that. Texting and speeding. They're not paying attention. They're on their phone. That's a problem that's not going away anytime soon. So here's something a situation where AEB can really play an invaluable role of saving lives and bringing down that fatality rate to zero.
So, Mr. Spear, are you saying that if vehicles had technology to prevent passenger vehicles from being involved in those distracted crashes, that would be helpful here as well?
Yeah, and it goes back to the earlier discussion too about automated vehicles. At level 1 to 4, there are telematics in there where the two are communicating with each other. So if you're on autopilot in the car and you're asleep, God forbid, or you're texting and not paying attention, the car is going to see the obstacle coming, whether it's a trailer or a building or whatnot. It's going to see that, it's going to apply the brakes, it's going to send off warnings to the driver. That's preventive. We prefer that. We prefer the kind of technology where the accident doesn't happen, where people don't get killed. And I think there's a lot of promise there. We should continue to invest in it.
I appreciate you saying that. There's a rulemaking currently before Secretary Duffy on a piece of legislation that I proudly passed with Rick Scott and other members of this committee that would require more of this technology to be in vehicles across the country. So I'm very proud to hear you say that. Now, with the trucking, can you tell me how you'll work to ensure that the technology we just talked about is deployed in trucks as soon as possible on the braking side?
Well, you've got to test it. Obviously, there's a lot of variables in terms of weight, how it's applied across the board. Is it for new trucks? Is it existing trucks? These are all things that, you need to take a little bit of time before mandating something to be sure that it works and that you're getting a return on that. So, I know that there's been some opposition here to electronic logging devices, and others said that our companies work people, for endless hours. No, they don't. No, they don't. That's why we have electronic logging devices, so they don't go over their period of work, that they are well rested, okay? If you want to keep paper books and cheat, all right, but the rule that you guys passed, told a DOT to do, is technology that tracks it, it keeps them under those hours, keeps them safe, keeps them rested. These are good things for the motoring public, not just our fleets and drivers. So there are technologies out there that have a safety return, and that is your title. So I think this is an important discussion. You got to keep investing in the good technologies, test them, deploy them. I think the department is very good about picking the best technologies that impact our industry and our safety rates.
And that includes braking?
Yes, that includes
appreciate
braking,
that.
absolutely.
Now, on driver fatigue, Mr. O'Brien, I do have a question there. As we know, it's a contributing factor to at least 13% of large truck crashes, and it was likely a contributing factor when the truck rammed into the blacksmith shop of the Gunter brothers. What needs to happen to reduce crashes due to fatigue?
Well, I think, any talk of expanding hours of service would be detrimental, and that would cause more collisions, more driver fatigue. But my colleague, I will agree that, technology that is going to reduce the risk of certain crashes, even though if a driver does fall asleep for fatigue or there is something preventable that technology can alert to avoid it. I mean, I don't think anybody at this table would disagree that that is paramount to the safe operation. But I think any talk of expanding hours of service would be detrimental and be a safety concern moving forward as well.
Appreciate that, sir. Now, last question I have, and I'll submit the others into the record. According to the FMCSA report, over 60% of truck drivers are not tested for alcohol and other substances following fatal crashes, despite an existing statute requiring carriers to do so. It's clear that this, quote, self-policing policy is failing. Now, my question is, this lack of accountability, which I would deem unacceptable. Mr. O'Brien, do you support efforts to ensure that all truck drivers are tested for drugs and alcohol following fatal crashes?
100%. As a matter of fact, I had a personal experience in the city of Boston. I was working for a crane company, Shaughnessy and Ahern, and a driver ran underneath my flatbed of my truck, and he died. I immediately, at 22 years old, was taken from the scene and drug tested, even though that I was not the cause of the accident. But that's an example. But I think the problem is enforcement. Enforcement. I mean, I don't think anybody wants anybody going down the road in an 80,000-pound vehicle under the influence of any controlled substance and or alcohol.
Appreciate it. Mr. Spear, yes or no?
Absolutely, yes. I think it's paramount. And we'll go so far to say hair testing as well.
Yeah.
In part because you have an opioid, plague going into every community right now. There are things out there with legalization of recreational marijuana. We didn't face that 10, 20 years ago. We do now. We need more tools to make sure that, to Sean's point, anyone that gets behind the wheel of an 80,000-pound vehicle is not impaired.
Appreciate that. Mr. Pew, yes or no?
Yes, we support after post-crash testing for sure, but we do not support the hair testing because we don't feel that there's enough research or data out there to show that it's true as what urine test is. It also, with different nationalities, different types of people, it doesn't always come out accurate, and there's plenty of proof to show that. Urine test has been working. That's what scientists set up years ago. That's what we should be using.
Thank you, Mr. Pugh. And Mr. Bryan, I know you have something else, but my time has expired. I'll make sure that we get something back.
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Lujan. Senator Fisher, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm so happy you are back. Ouch. You deserved that. Mr. O'Brien, thank you for being here today. I enjoyed working with you last year on the REEF Act, where we helped ensure that railroaders' hard-earned benefits were not going to be subject to sequester. That legislation, now law, was a prime example, I believe, of how Congress, industry, and labor can come together to benefit hardworking people. As we look forward to service reauthorization, I hope we can continue in this collaborative fashion between industry and labor. You mentioned, sir, in your testimony and in earlier comments here today, the importance of removing predatory CDL training programs from the training provider registry. I know this is a concern that is shared by Mr. Spear and ATA, as well as CVTA and others. Mr. O'Brien, what steps do you recommend this committee take to improve FMCSA's oversight of the TPR?
Well, I think first and foremost, I want to thank you for your hard work with our rail workers who obviously need CDLs outside of the FMCA. We have about 40 to 50,000 members that fix and keep the rails moving so the trains can stay on them. But more importantly, I think we have to take a deep dive on all the vendors that are on the list that provide CDL training, because there are a lot of predatory trainers out there that will put you through a training program where you're not qualified, you can't pass the skills test, and you're not marketable. Most of these folks are paying out of their own pockets to go to these schools. So I think eliminating the bad actors by doing some audits and statistics can show that they are not performing and/or providing the qualified drivers necessary to keep our roads, the public safety, and the people safe. Now, we have 20 schools that we run nationwide under the Teamster umbrella, and I ran one of them in Boston in the late 90s, where we were very successful in our training. We were able to successfully train, but more importantly, transition people into jobs that actually could do the jobs because of their training, because of their education. And a lot of what we've seen over the past years is people coming from some of these predatory schools coming to our 20 training facilities who paid thousands upon thousands of jobs, thousands of dollars, and are not qualified to do this job. So I think imposing and enforcing criteria and mandates for these predatory and getting rid of the ones that are not successful where it's just a money grab.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Spear and Mr. Pew, I want to thank you both for your continued support of my Household Goods Shipping Consumer Protection Act. The bill cracks down on cargo theft by giving FMCSA enforcement tools to protect consumers from fraud by scammers. This committee has unanimously advanced the bill, and I look forward to working with both of you to get it into law. On another topic, I want to discuss EVs, not all the stuff we've already gone through, so calm down. I want to be able to discuss with you both the Highway Trust Fund. Though the fund is outside this committee's jurisdiction, I remain concerned about its solvency and the impact that insolvency would have on our entire system, infrastructure around this entire country. Though not a silver bullet, we need to get electric vehicles paying into the fund. Currently, electric vehicles don't pay a dime. They are heavier, they cause more damage to roadways without paying for the repair, for the maintenance. They impact new construction as well. I have legislation that requires electric vehicles to contribute to the Federal Highway Trust Fund, and I know T&I Chair Graves in the House has a proposal as well, and I appreciate his work to address this important issue. From your perspective, gentlemen, why is it important for EVs to contribute to the trust fund and for Congress to step up and address the fund's solvency in our upcoming surface reauthorization?
So you know I am calm now.
Thank you.
You know me better than my own staff, so I would just say that all users have to pay. Okay, they do. If you're on the roads, you're on the bridges, you should pay. EVs don't, and they're heavier. It's a developing technology that we need to capture and ensure that our roads and bridges remain a priority and that those using them are contributing to that. I think fairness and some evolution here. It's been since '93 since Congress has, raised the fuel tax. It's not politically popular, I get it, on both sides of the aisle. We just did a highway bill, we took it out of general funds. Not a big fan of that. We do support the user fee. Why? Because the fuel tax is the most efficient way to pay into the trust fund. It's less than a penny. So we need to replace it with something that doesn't jack up the administration costs like tolling, weight distance tax, or even congestion pricing. We're talking about 20, 25% administrative fee. We need that money going to roads and bridges, not be getting chewed up in administration costs. So we're looking very seriously about advocating a registration fee that applies to everybody, trucks, cars, EVs. You already register your vehicle at the state DMVs. You just simply pay for what you normally would pay in fuel costs at the pump. Get rid of the gas tax, get rid of the tire tax, get rid of all the taxes, put it in a registration fee. You're probably looking at about $200 to $250 a year for a motorist. Okay, be more for us, that's fine. We're willing to do that. But for a motorist, having that spread out too over 12 months, because $250 for some folks is a lot of money.
It is.
Spread it over 12 months so they can pay it that way. But that will capture everybody. It's fair. You're using it. You register a vehicle. There you go.
Okay, Mr. Pugh, I'd like to hear your thoughts as well.
Yeah, we definitely support some sort of registration fee or something going to the Highway Trust Fund with electric vehicles. I mean, by all means, why shouldn't they pay? They use the highways, and they should. We should also make sure we're not giving them special carve-outs for hauling them or transporting them because they're heavier loads to haul and transport. We should make sure we're not doing that as well. I think what we need to do is, unfortunately, is get the intestinal fortitude here in Congress to raise the gas tax, because it hasn't been raised. It does work. You pay it at the pump. People don't realize it. Why create anything new other than for these vehicles, electric vehicles, to pay a registration? And
Yeah, I'm just focused on capturing a user fee of some kind from EVs, whether they're passenger vehicles, trucks, whatever.
Correct.
Because they pulverize a roadbed, yeah,
And I
more
would,
so.
I would also think that we could put some sort of a collection on their pumps, just like we do for fuel, but for electricity, where you take it right there at the time.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Moreno, who has escaped, I'd like to point out that he and I are trying to work on something here so that we can add more revenue to the Highway Trust Fund. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Well, thank you for your leadership on that issue, Senator Fisher. I would love to review that bill if I'm not already on it. So I will recognize Senator Klobuchar.
Okay, thank you. And I heard the beginning of your testimony there, Mr. Spear, when I was here earlier, and you were talking about cargo theft, correct? As you know, we've held a hearing in this subcommittee on the growing threat of cargo theft. Often involves high-value retail goods, but not always. One dairy protein export company in Minnesota has reported an average of 1 to 3 break-ins per month just for containers of dry milk powder. Of course, valuable, but I don't think people probably think it's like jewelry or something, but this is what's going on with some of the food shipments. How can we best address this issue? And I think I'll ask you that as well, Mr. Pugh. Thanks.
Well, I would just say thank you for your leadership and co-sponsoring the Corca bill. You've heard 2 testimonies now in this committee as well as in Judiciary Committee, and we're very excited that you all are taking the time to really shine a spotlight on this issue. We need federal leadership in concert with state and local and in partnership with our industry. We have all got to collectively come together if we're to put a stop at this practice. This is a lot more advanced than what we were seeing 10, 15, 20 years ago. As long as trucks have been on the road, there's been theft. I mean, hit and run type things. What we're seeing now is transnational organizations operating out of Eastern Europe, Russia. They're hacking into the bill of lading. Sometimes when the truck is in motion, driver sees it come up, the drop changes. They think it's legit because it's the company. By the time they drop the load and figure out what just happened, it's long gone. This is very advanced type of practices that we really need coordination with DHS, DOJ, with our states and local government and industry. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Mr. Pugh.
Yes, and we need, FMCSA needs the power to go after these folks and the oversight as well, and truckers need a place and brokers as well to report these kind of things. We get calls on a daily basis, OOIDA, where drivers are taking loads and they get the load, they deliver the load, and it's a fictitious broker. The broker's pretended to be someone else. I know brokers are dealing with the same thing with truckers. Trucking companies are getting their identities stolen. It's too easy for trucking companies to sell their identity, and it's much too easy to get into our industry in the first place. That's where this all starts.
Yeah.
As I've said in a past hearing, you can take someone off the street who's never even been in a truck or seen a truck, and in a month and a half, they can be a full-blown truck driver and motor carrier. That's insane. That's insanity. To be a broker, you post $75,000 bond and you're a broker. We've got to start at the beginning, stopping these folks.
All right. One of the things that this kind of plays into is just workforce retention and supply chain, and that means ensuring that crucial careers like trucking receive good wages. My grandpa started out delivering and pulling a wagon, ended up as a miner. But we know, Mr. O'Brien, we know that unions ensure that truck driving not only keeps workers with good wages, but also makes it safer. talk about this as the need to keep our drivers there in the long term.
Well, I think it's continuity of the workforce. I mean, you take companies like UPS where you can go to work as a part-timer unloading trucks at 18, you become 21, you can go out on the road, deliver a package, your earnings go up, you're accruing credit for your health and welfare pension, and then when you get enough seniority, you get the ability to drive tractor trailers. There's a path to a career here, and that path to a career is your wages being the highest, you have the best health benefits, and have a retirement that you can retire with respect and dignity. You look at ABF, you look at T-Force, you look at a lot of regional carriers that we represent. There is 10 to 15% turnover ratio, not because of low wages, not because of benefits or anything else. And that's proven. I mean, we have statistics that prove it. And I think the higher standards that are set, especially working under a collective bargaining agreement, is going to help retain drivers. That's why it's important. And I mentioned earlier, we've got a bipartisan bill with Senator Hawley and Senator Booker requiring the Fair Labor Standards Contract, where you can organize without any threats of retribution, retaliation, and there's a mechanism to get to a first contract through binding arbitration.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Enjoy working with you, as you know. Last question, Mr. Ferguson. I weirdly just got a text from Charlie Zelli. Do you know he used to head up Jefferson bus line?
Absolutely. He's a strong member of ours.
Right, and then became the head of our transportation. He was transportation commissioner, did a great job, and now at our Met Council, he's just announcing, I don't know, well, I'll tell you about it later. Okay, so the FMCSA, the Passenger Carrier Division, can you speak to the impact, this was in your testimony, that low staffing has on motor coach operators and how important this is? Different version of the question of Mr. O'Brien.
Yeah, my testimony recommends that prioritizing staffing at the passenger carrier division is a huge priority. The interaction that our staff has with their staff is ongoing and daily, typically. You know, understanding what's the operational reality of this regulation or that new requirement is very helpful for the regulators to understand what is it like on the roads and on the ground, and vice versa. For us to have a better understanding of intent, desire, outcomes, it can allow us to better communicate and share with our membership what's happening, what's coming, et cetera. So having more points of contact, more partners, we host a variety of webinars, in-person safety briefings, having speakers, engagement, that cross-coordination is a huge part of our success.
Okay. Thank you. I'm done, but I will ask in writing, Mr. Spear, some questions about distracted driving. I have this big priority of mine and really, really important. So maybe we can have another hearing on that at some point, but thank you.
Senator Markey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, very much. According to CBS analysis of federal data, Amazon's delivery truck contractors consistently have higher safety violation rates compared to the rest of the industry. From 2019 to 2024, Amazon's contractors had a violation rate roughly double the industry average. Because of Amazon's nefarious corporate practices of misclassifying workers and shirking its joint employer responsibilities, Amazon itself has not been held accountable by regulators for the performance of its fleet. Each individual subcontracted delivery truck company faces consequences when something goes wrong. Companies like Amazon can use this subcontracting scam to wash their hands of responsibility for the overall performance of their operations. An operation the size and scale of Amazon's, lacking a comprehensive safety record for which the company can be held accountable, is dangerous for drivers and other motorists and unfair to companies that play by the rules. Mr. O'Brien, do you agree that Amazon's trucking model shields the company from accountability for its safety record?
It absolutely does.
And in your view, maybe you can expand, does Amazon structure its operations this way to avoid accountability?
Yes, I testified earlier that, they use a lot of these independent contractors, these smaller companies that have their own individual DOT numbers, which it's tough to point to saying Amazon's responsible, and Amazon will say, well, they're not direct employees of ours, they're subcontractors. So it's a game, it's a scam. And you look at an employer like United Parcel Service that is similar in nature, where they have all direct employees, they have a proven track safety program in place, collectively administered by the union and by management, where we do the same exact work, the same neighborhoods, and we've got a stellar record in safety because of the training and the cooperation and the work collectively by both. Now, I'll give you a prime example, and everybody sees Amazon in their neighborhoods. If you look at an Amazon truck in your neighborhood delivering, you look at the shape that truck is in, you look at the condition it's in, and then you look at the condition that a UPS truck is in, that'll tell the story right there.
Yep. And so as a result, safety just falls into a regulatory black hole. Who's responsible? You know, so that's the issue. Mr. Chairman, I have a letter from the Truck Safety Coalition that I would like to enter into the record with unanimous consent.
Without objection.
Thank you. In Mr. Spear's testimony, he discusses at length an argument we often hear, Mr. O'Brien, from the trucking industry. The government should weaken safety regulations, such as lowering the minimum age to hold a commercial driver's license from 21 to 18 to address the trucking industry driver shortage. Trucking is a very dangerous industry. Any argument to lower safety standards deserves close scrutiny. So let's examine. The word shortage implies the pool of qualified workers is too small. But 2 million people hold commercial driver's licenses in the United States, and hundreds of thousands more licenses are issued every single year. All these qualified drivers are competing for about 900,000 long-haul trucking jobs. And while there are plenty of qualified drivers available, many trucking companies struggle to retain these drivers. In fact, this is an incredible number, 90% of truck drivers leave their job after 1 year, 90%. This high level of turnover suggests the issue might not be whether there are enough drivers, but whether existing drivers are getting enough out of the job. So before we take more actions to make trucking less safe, Mr. O'Brien, do you believe that a 90% turnover rate in the long-haul trucking is the sign of a healthy industry?
No, I think long-haul trucking is a very difficult job. I think we can all agree to that. It's a lot of time away from your family, a lot of sacrifice. But if you have a 90% turnover ratio, then there is something wrong in the industry. When you look at unionized carriers who have 10 to 15% turnover ratio, that's significant because that means people are happy with their wages, they're happy with their benefits. When you have a race to the bottom and people keep leaving jobs after 12 months or leaving the industry, and I think the number we have, there's 4 to 6 million people in this country that hold CDL licenses, and I believe 3.5 million are actually on the roads today. So there is definitely a breakdown somewhere, and we know for a fact that when people aren't making the highest wages, when they're not getting the best benefits, they're not going to stay at a job.
Yeah. So when wages are too low, you're obviously going to have massive turnover, and a 90% turnover rate shows workers are not thriving, and any argument that says that they are is just not credible. My father was a truck driver, sat at our kitchen table every night, every morning. I'm a senator, but he got paid a living wage, okay? And so truck drivers are hardworking people. My father was 6'1", 265, and you can just see what that truck driver looked like, okay? These are hard.
They had good diners back then, sir.
Excuse me?
They had good diners at the truck stops back then.
The times have changed, and we're going to have to build in protections to make sure that those people who could put 3 children through college and law school, have protections, benefits that fit the hard work that they put in every day. I thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Well, thank you, Senator Markey, and thank you to all of our witnesses. This has really been a terrific hearing. We've appreciated all of your testimony. Senators will have until the close of business on Tuesday, July 29th to submit additional questions for the record, and the witnesses will have until the close of business on Tuesday, August 12 to respond to those questions. This concludes today's hearing. The committee stands adjourned. Thank you.